By automating a part of your A/B test analysis, you can spend more time on creating new A/B tests. This helps you to run more A/B tests and therefore become more successful. Now, automating your analysis can be quite tricky, and some experience in Google Sheets or Excel is needed. You might need to play around with it for a while, but eventually you should be able to create a nice automated analysis, which saves you a lot of time in the future. In this course, we will create two automated analyses. One, which keeps track of the test when it is live, and the other, which helps you to analyze the test when it is done and create an automated report in Google Slides. In this lesson, we will cover keeping track of the test. So let's start with the basics. Go to Google Sheets and create a new blank file. Now you first need to enable the Google Analytics add-on in your account. If Google Analytics is not displayed here, click Get Add-ons and find it there. Now with the add-on being enabled, you can establish a connection between Google Sheets and Google Analytics using the Google Analytics API. Now let's try and get some Google Analytics data in our Google Sheets. Go to Google Analytics and create a new report. Now let's give it a name. Let's call it Demo. As I can show the numbers for my own website, I will use that Google Analytics account for this example. Now for the metrics, we want to see the number of users, and we want to see the number of users per device category. Now let's click Create Report. And this will create an extra tab with the report configuration. Now let's straight away go to Add-ons, Google Analytics, and run reports. And there we go. We have the number of users right here, and if the data is sampled or not. Now let's add another report. Now let's open up these settings, which are hidden. Let's copy it and paste it right here. And let's name it Demo 2. Now let's change the start date of the first report. And let's set the start date to 7 days ago. And the end date to yesterday with a formula. There we go. Now for the second report, let's set the start date to the week before that, so -14, and the end date is last week, today -8. So with this data, we can make a comparison between the number of users in the last 7 days and the number of users in the week before that. Now before we run this report, let's go over some of these configuration options. So the report name is obvious. The view ID corresponds with the ID in Google Analytics, which you can find in your admin panel and in view settings. We have it right here. We covered the start and end date, and the metrics and dimensions are those from Google Analytics. Now, as the names in the Google Analytics API are a bit different from the original names which you see in Google Analytics, you can use this web page over here to find the right API name. So for instance, if you want to have a certain page, we can see that the API name is GA page path. And if you want to know the device category, we can see that this is simply GA device category. Now, of course, a link to this page is available in the lecture resources. So the order is the order the results will be sorted. So you might want to sort on a number of users, for instance. Filters and segments are the same as in Google Analytics. And you saw filters in the custom report over here. Now the limit is the number of results the query should return. And with skip report, you can choose to not run the report if you set this to true. For the sampling level, you can always set this to higher precision, like this. By doing so, the report will take a bit longer to load, but your data is not sampled. And as sampled data is not trustworthy, that is something we don't want. And the last one we will cover is the user quotas. In case you have Google Analytics 360, so the paid version of Google Analytics, you can use your user quotas in case you have a large amount of data. In that case, your user quotas will prevent sampling. Now let's run this report. Let's first set this to higher precision as well. Go to Add-ons, Google Analytics, and run reports. And there we go. So now we have the numbers for last week and the week before that. Now let's create a master sheet. And let's name this master. And get those numbers in. So last week and the week before. And we want to see the number of users. So for the last week, we need this number. And for the week before that, we need this number over here. Now we can also make a graph of this. And let's set it to this graph. And there we go. Now we can also calculate the increase. So there's an increase in users of almost 25%. We have the users, we have the graph. And now when we run this report again, let's say next week, these numbers and this graph will automatically be updated. So this is a start. Now if we want, we can schedule the report to run every Sunday evening. So on Monday, when we get to work, we can see how last week performed compared to the week before. Now let's see if we can make this for our running A/B tests so we can automatically keep track of them. So I already set up this master sheet. On the master sheet, I included 5 tests. For each test, you will have to include the test setup. So the GA view ID, the event labels for control and the variations. And if you have only one variation in your test, you can simply leave this label over here empty. We have the device category. So here you can select where the test is running on all devices on mobile, desktop, or tablet. We have the URL on which page the test is running, which can either contain or matches a certain URL. We have the conversion URL, which can, for instance, be /success, or the thank you page, which could be /thank you, like this. We have the start date of the test and the end date. And the end date is automatically set for yesterday. So I included a test setup for our Book a Bus test. So we have ID7 control as event label for control and ID7 variation 1 as event label for variation 1. And we don't have a variation 2. It runs on all devices. The URL where the test is running matches the /, which is the home page. The conversion URL is /success. And we can set the start date and end date. And now you can do this for up to 5 tests. Now let's check out the report configuration. Here we can see that for every test, we want to see the number of users in the event label, and we want to see this event label for sessions who visited the test page, which is stated right here. Next, we want to see those visitors who converted. And in Google Analytics, we already covered how to set up a sequence when setting up a segment. So in this case, we want the visitors of the home page, followed by, so this means followed by a conversion, so visit to the success page. And this does not mean immediately followed by, but followed by in the same session. So someone can visit the homepage, visit 10 other pages, and eventually visit the success page. Now, as you can see, the skip report is set to true. That's because test 1 only has the control and the variation. And the same goes for the other tests. We did not include any other tests. We only have one test, so this is all set to true. So we only need 4 reports in this case. Now, when you have the correct setup right here, you can again run the report, which I already did. And when we check it out, we see all the needed numbers to keep track of our test. So let's see what we got right here when we scroll down for the results. We first see to check if there's any sample data in the tests. If there's no sample data, you will get a check mark. Next is the SRM. This topic will be covered in the next lesson. But when it is good, you'll get a check mark. And if the conversion rate in the variations is not lower than 10% compared to control, you will get a check mark here as well. If the conversion rate in the variation is 10% lower than control, you might want to check it out, go to Google Analytics and do segmentation and for instance see if your test is causing a bug or an error on a certain browser or device. So this all looks good. So next, you can see the current number of users in the test, the conversions per variation, the conversion rate, the improvement in the conversion rate, and the SRM check. And you can see this for each variation and each test you are running. Now, if you schedule this report to run every night, you can check the status each morning when you get to work. So instead of going to Google Analytics and for 5 tests, set up the report and segmentation, you can now see it in one glance and check how your test is doing. And this will of course save you a lot of time. So there we go. Setting this up yourself might require some practice in the beginning. But when you have this set up, you will save time, which you can spend on building more tests and therefore become more successful. A link to this report is available in the lecture resources, so you can check it out yourself. And do give it a try, because this setup might work for your website as well, and in that case, you won't have to build your own report.